Welcome to Football Game Plan Starting Lineup. I'm Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook. That's Chris James at CJ Florida 9. That is McMain High School. Both of us went to McMain High School in New Orleans, former high school teammates, longtime friends. Here to give you guys some outstanding fantasy football advice. Chris, what's going on with you?
Man, I'm trying to make it. It's a little chilly down here in Tampa, so it dropped below 70 degrees. I had to put on a limber.
This is almost cupping season down there for you guys.
Basically.
Like I ain't gonna lie, it was colder earlier in the week out here in New York. It was in the 50s. I know that's harsh winter for you guys down there, but today was about 70 degrees. Nice to go for a little walk early in the morning, get the juices flowing.
Right. I get it.
Well, anyway, waiver wire, as always, we love to hit the waiver wire because things change, especially in this COVID-19, this pandemic football season we're in. Things change constantly. So let's start with the quarterbacks. Who's on the waiver wire that you have your eye on?
And, people have been eating up the quarterbacks this year because, it seems like you just need one. Every week, you don't know who to play. So I'm going to go with the guy versus the team that seems to give up all the points to receivers, and that's Kirk Cousins. So they're playing against Seattle. Kirk had a good game last week comparatively to some of his earlier games. Seattle should be a get-right game for him in this offense. Going with another guy who I generally wouldn't put on this list, but I like the matchup, and that's Phillip Rivers against the Cleveland Browns. Look, this should be a game where some points are scored. I know that the Colts are playing good defense, but they might not be able to run as easily as they can actually throw in this particular game. And the last pickup is actually a stash. I know we generally do this week of, but it's Tua Tagovailoa. Listen, we watched Ryan Fitzpatrick go full Ryan Fitzpatrick this season. He's been great, and he was not great is the best way to put it. Last week, Tua's going to start eventually, so you're not going to be able to wait until it's the week he's starting. You go ahead and pick him up, put him on your bench right now.
Just to ask you right quick, if you're talking about Tua Tagovailoa in real football, how would you handle that situation? Would you have started him when he was medically cleared to go, or are you ready to start him now, or would you wait till after a bye week or something like that?
So I would have handled it exactly the way they did. They had a capable and competent quarterback who actually finished the season strong last year in Ryan Fitzpatrick. He's had his inconsistencies, and that's been what Ryan Fitzpatrick is his entire career. So even this week, what they're doing with Tua, they're taking it slow. I know he's medically cleared, but that was a pretty devastating injury. And then number two, they want this guy to be their quarterback for the next 10 years, not the rest of the season. So whenever they feel he's ready to take on that mantle, that's when you hand over the keys. The other two rookie quarterbacks have done a great job since they've gotten jobs.
Smart move, because that way he fully knows the offense. You expect your staff to be there again throughout the season and also into next year or throughout his whole career, hopefully. So by the time he gets in there, he should be able to hit the ground running. And speaking of running backs, I like the back that you have here on your waiver wire, the former Alliance of American Football star, Dearness Johnson. Tell me about him and some of the guys that you have your eye on this week.
Sure. So I actually wasn't that aware of him prior to this week. And when I'm watching the game, I'm like, this guy is running hard. He's running well. He's finding the hole. He should be another compliment. Remember, they've utilized two backs this entire season so far, getting Kareem Hunt involved, not just in the passing game, but getting him some carries. So the same thing should happen going forward. Hunt has also been a little banged up this year, and I think they really do want to do a 2-to-1. So 2 carries for Kareem Hunt, 1 carry for Dearness Johnson, and he's only an injury, and I don't root for it, away from being a bell cow back in a run-heavy offense. So he's a good pickup. Another guy to look at is Justin Jackson. Terrible injury for a guy and Austin Eckler, but you know what? Joshua Kelly, who was getting some carries, wasn't as efficient. Maybe Justin Jackson can take some carries going forward. And then a guy who on a couple of shows ago, I said, he's not going to save your season, but you know what? If he's going to have a good week, it'll be this week. And that is Devonta Freeman, because that Dallas defensive line has been being pushed around. So just pick him up and see what he's able to produce this week. And then the last guy is Damian Harris off of IR. He's running hard. He looks like the same back from Alabama who wants to run through people's faces. He did it again, and he may continue to do it going forward.
What's funny about Devonta Freeman? Every time I watch him, I'm like, man, this dude running the heck out of the ball. He looking good. And then you wait till in the game, you're like, he only had 10 carries? Well, I feel like he had way more carries than that in the game. That was in his first game last week and the game this past weekend against the Cowboys. Now, out on the perimeter, I see some names on this list that are impressive and guys that are going to start to catch fire as the season rolls along. It's funny that they're on the waiver wire, but I understand some of those situations. But who are these guys you're talking about out there on the flanks?
Sure. So one guy is a second round pick who, honestly, he's outworking the former all-star receiver, and that's T. Higgins. He's the guy that you want this week. AJ Green is looking like he, unfortunately, isn't the same guy anymore. T. Higgins has been great since he's gotten in there. So if he's still available in your league, some 12-team leagues he's not going to be available in, but put him on your bench, see if he continues to do this. Another receiver is a guy who I was really high on coming out. He was injured to start the season, but he scored a touchdown in his first game back. That's Christian Kirk. There's a pass-heavy offense. He's got too much talent to just be left floating out there. I think he can be big down the stretch. And the last guy is a guy who, this is due to the matchup against Carolina, and also because Julio doesn't look right. I don't know what's wrong with him, but he doesn't look right, and that's Russell Gage. He was getting targets when Julio was fully healthy. Julio hasn't been healthy since he pulled up lame on that Russell Gage pass. So Russell Gage will probably get more targets this week. This Monday night game was an anomaly with what happened against the Packers for Russell Gage.
Yeah, I agree. That just was an anomaly. The game had to start late because of the previous game with the Chiefs and the Patriots. So everything was thrown out of whack. Now we move on to tight ends, and this used to be the Mo Alley Cox spot. I'm pretty sure now people have figured out that you got to sign him, get him off waivers, and now he's on rosters across the fantasy football landscape. So who are some guys at the tight end position that could replace him as, hey man, go grab this guy right now?
Bingo. And all three of these guys are 1 week guys with great matchups. So I'm going to look at Kyle Rudolph against Seattle. Again, Kirk Cousins going to be throwing the ball a lot. And if he gets to the red zone, they're going to stack that box so that Dalvin Cook doesn't get in play action to the big target. And Kyle Rudolph should be something they go to. Eric Ebron. Eric Ebron is a splash in the pan type guy. He could be a guy against Philly. Remember, I think Kittle had like 15 receptions this week. They don't do well against the tight end position, so Ebron could be a guy who gets a touchdown this week. And the final one is Jared Cook against the Chargers. Again, Drew Brees with Michael Thomas coming back. I think he's going to get force-fed targets, but the touchdown monster could end up being Jared Cook if you need a 1 week flyer.
Defense and special teams can help you win fantasy football leagues. I swear, people need to take those things seriously, especially in some areas this week where Hurricane Delta may play a role in the type of field conditions we may see. So who are some of the defenses and special teams that you're keeping an eye on this upcoming week that's on the waiver wire?
Yeah, and this team is, all three of these teams, definitely the first ones on the waiver wire, but I have a sneaky feeling they'll have a great game, and that's the Texans against the Jaguars. Listen, they just let go of their coach. The head coach taking over as a defensive guy. I think they can rise up with the talent they have on defense and defend that Jacksonville offense pretty well. I'm assured that they're on the waiver wire in your league. Go pick them up. Another team that's probably our Cardinals, if they're available, they're playing the Jets. Let's move on. So,
all right.
Basically. And then the last one is a sneaky play, a team that's had 2 weeks to prepare for a really good offense. That's the Tennessee Titans, and they're playing against the Buffalo Bills. I know that we've had some ups and downs with the Buffalo Bills. They've done really well, but again, 2 weeks to prepare. This is a talented defense. That's a sneaky pick that you can get that get you some points this week.
Yeah, that's a good point, because you have a team that had an extra week to prepare for Buffalo, and it looks like that game is going to be on, and the Bills are coming off of a game where they had to play the Raiders out west, come back to take on Tennessee, and let's see what happens. I think the Titans having to prepare in a unique situation, like you said, could be primed for a really good defensive performance on Sunday. So we'll step aside, take a quick break, and be back with more Football Game Plan's Fantasy Football starting lineup.
Be sure to order your copy of the Go-Go Offense by Coach Brennan Marion on footballgameplan.com/GoGo Offense. Coach Marion goes through the ins and outs of his explosive offense, one that's tearing up the college football field and putting a lot of points on the scoreboard. Again, you can order your copy at footballgameplan.com/GoGo Offense.
And welcome back to Football Game Plan's Fantasy Football starting lineup. Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook. I'm at Football Game Plan. Chris James is my co-host. He is at CJ Florida 9. Be sure to smash that follow button. Also subscribe on iTunes, Football Game Plan Podcast. Leave us a 5-star rating. Subscribe here on YouTube at youtube.com/Football Game Plan. Subscribe and also share with all your family and friends that you feel a part of the show, feel a part of the conversation here at Football Game Plan. So Chris, we are a quarter of the way done with the NFL season, which is weird. So we're already 1 quarter in. Let's take a look at some of your thoughts and takeaways from the first quarter of the season. And let's start from a fantasy football perspective, and let's start with the quarterback position.
So the quarterback position, there's this mantra that's kind of been championed by people who assess fantasy football. It's wait on QB, wait on QB. I'm one of those people. But this year is the first year where the people who champion taking quarterbacks early, they've been right. Whether it's, the Russell Wilsons of the world, these quarterbacks I'm about to name have probably won you a week. And for some of them, it wasn't even close. Russell Wilson, Dak Prescott, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Aaron Rodgers, Kyler Murray. Those are the guys who have won you weeks, especially Dak Prescott, who might throw for 6,000, and I'm not joking, yards this year. So this is the first year where the contrarian play of taking a quarterback early might have worked out for you. And Deshaun Watson should be on that list. Listen, he legit played the 85 Bears, the 81 49ers. He played the 90 Giants. That's how he started this season. Getting the Bill O'Brien thing out of the way and also not having to play those teams, he should do really well for you down the stretch. So he's another one. So the quarterback position has been a little different.
I thought Will Fuller caught that football this past Sunday against the Vikings, but I see why, because it moved a little bit. But man, that sometimes you gotta let it go. You gotta catch. Yeah, you gotta swallow your whistle on that one, man. Don't challenge it. Let's get some action. Let's go to overtime. Let's get the 2-point conversion out there. Let's have some fun. It was just ready to go home. I don't blame him. You know what I'm saying? Sunday, probably got something good on the stove in the kitchen. But at running back, what did we learn so far? I feel like everybody this year, automatically they had Christian McCaffrey number 1, and maybe Saquon Barkley number 2. But as we've seen so far this season, things are not what they seem. So what are your first quarter thoughts from the running back position?
See, there's also a mantra that goes along with certain people in this industry, and it's always have a handcuff. Always have your handcuff. And this is the perfect season to signify that. I'm going to give you a list of running backs that have either missed significant time or will miss significant time during this year. Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, Nick Chubb, Austin Eckler. These guys are going to miss 3 or more weeks. Now, some of them I wouldn't have had the handcuff, but again, their handcuffs look like they're all in good positions right now. So this is the first year where I might have to change my position and start doing the handcuff thing. And the other thing I've seen is, you know what? Make sure you get as many guys who have as much control of that backfield as possible. You got to take those running backs early, even if it feels like a reach. Got to take those running backs early, because we're seeing what happens if you don't have depth at that position this year.
And again, you may see some guys that have 3 running back lineups. They'll have their 2 starters and throw a running back in the flex. I would even toss out, you better have a back that can catch passes, one that's a really good receiver.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if you're playing in what now has become the standard, PPR scoring, because now the standard leagues have been replaced with PPR all over the place.
Yeah, if you're not playing PPR, you're missing out, because it's a great way to rack up fantasy points. It used to be a great way to have receivers that can go out there and just catch, 5-6 passes a game, over 100-something yards, 2 touchdowns. But you have some interesting takeaways from, the first quarter based on what you've seen from some of these receivers.
Man, it's a rough start for those guys that were considered first or early second round wide receivers. There's a consensus top 4. Through 4 games so far this season, Michael Thomas and Devontae Adams, the 2 clear-cut consensus top 2 receivers, have missed 3 or 4 games. Julio Jones doesn't look like he's Julio Jones. I don't know if that's age or just whatever. The only one that's giving you any value is DeAndre Hopkins, and even the value he's giving you has been superseded. So what does this tell me? Kind of what I've been practicing. You wait on wide receiver, because you could have gotten a Calvin Ridley and a Stephon Diggs and been killing it this year. So wait till those middle rounds, because there's no position with more depth than wide receiver. You can win big if you wait till the mid rounds, and it's been exacerbated this year.
Especially when you look at some of those teams that you talked about, and some of those quarterbacks that may have dual threat guys. Those rushing yards from those quarterbacks tend to eat away at a lot of those receiving opportunities for wideouts out there. I mean, you look at a Marquise Brown, right? He's the clear-cut number 1, but he also has Lamar Jackson. So we won't see Marquise Brown have those big games like we see from, DeAndre Hopkins.
Right. That's absolutely the case. And, it's been such a weird year, but it's definitely one that tells you that you kind of want to wait on wide receiver and lean more towards running back, because those guys with backfield control, they're few and far between.
The tight end position is unique. We just talked about it earlier, joked about it earlier in segment one, talking about Mo Alley Cox being on waivers, and a lot of guys that are still on waivers that are pretty prominent names. So, what has been your takeaways from the tight end position in the first quarter?
So I have a method that I've used and it's worked really well for me. It's called punting, which means waiting until you
Well, the game of football has taught me so many things, man. Now, think about the huddle we have right now, right? I tell people this all the time. There's a reason why they call it a huddle. People have been huddling all their lives, trying to find ways to enhance each other's lives. The great teams do that all the time. The great teams do that. The better the huddle, the better the team. And so it's simple, man, how if you huddle for all the right reasons, we wouldn't have Ferguson. We wouldn't have some of the challenges that we have in our society. But as we all know, there's always a moment when somebody doesn't belong in the huddle. And yet we have to continue to move on. We got to continue to play. So the game of life, man, is always starting with a huddle. And for me, I'm lucky enough to know that, by the graces of God, man, it's been a nice huddle. It's been a nice huddle. And if I just keep making sure that he's in front of me, I'm gonna be all right.
And welcome back to Football Game Plan's Fantasy Football Starting Lineup. Emory Hunt, the Czar of the Playbook. Chris James at CJ Florida 9. I'm at Football Game Plan. Chris, now it's time, as always, in the third segment, your starting lineup. And let's look at your starting lineup here. A lot of great names on it, but I see you once again listed 2 quarterbacks, one being Dak Prescott. Why?
Because apparently the Dallas Cowboys refuse to play any defense no matter how much talent they have. So Dak Prescott is putting up Madden numbers. Dude threw for 500 yards and 4 touchdowns this week. So start Dak Prescott against everyone except the bye week. Literally, that's the only one that Dak Prescott cannot be started. So start him every week.
Man, listen, how bad was it that Amari Cooper stopped on that route at the end?
I don't want to talk about it because it, as a former receiver, it made me so mad to watch the cornerback play better receiver than the receiver. He looked scary out there, and I don't think that's as a player. So I was disappointed.
He saw that contact and was like, I'm gonna step aside and let you go ahead on to have this one. So looking at your sitting lineup, one name that's on there that's shocking to me because he balled out last week. That's Joe Mixon and his long neck. So why is Joe Mixon on your sitting list?
So I want to mention one running back before, and it's on my starting lineup. I want to mention Clyde Edwards-Helaire because there's this whole thing going on mentally with people. He's not scoring enough touchdowns and this and that. The Chiefs don't give a doggone about your fantasy team. But what they do give a doggone about is winning games. This is a perfect matchup for him against a team that can't do anything against the running back. He should have a big game and probably get you those touchdowns you've been waiting for the entire season. For Joe Mixon, as a person who's championed him, he was number 4 on my board this year, and I look like a fool right now. Well, not last week. Last week wasn't an anomaly. It was matchup based. This week is matchup based. They're not using him in the passing game to the level that I think they should. They use Gio Bernard. This is a game where they'll probably be behind often because the Baltimore Ravens should put up points. Therefore, they're going to probably use Gio Bernard on more snaps. So Joe Mixon's not going to get the same opportunity he did last week against the Jacksonville defense that refused to tackle him last week.
Yeah, he looked like he was running through practice reps. I'm glad you brought up Clyde Edwards-Helaire because, you see it a lot. People already want to dump him and talking about, that's why you don't drive running back in the first round, all that craziness that you see. But he'll start getting it going once they start getting into the meat of their schedule. He almost could be a sleeper at this point. But speaking of sleepers, I know you got some good ones that people are going to find and mine and stash on their roster or start them this week. So who are your sleepers for week 5?
Okay, so I'm going to have to take my sleeper quarterback off because it was announced that he is not going to start this week. And that was going to be Tua Tagovailoa. I think that he was going to have a great matchup if he were to play against San Francisco. So I'm going to take him off of my board just because, again, Ryan Fitzpatrick is now the starter. Heck, Ryan Fitzpatrick is now my sleeper for the week because after a down week last week, of course it's a Ryan Fitzpatrick week against a San Francisco defense that in most instances is stellar. At the running back position, we talked about him earlier. That's Dearness Johnson. I think in a matchup against Indy, it's a contrarian play because Indy has been one of the best defenses. But this offensive line and the method that they use in Cleveland is bullying people. So I think this young man could be a deep sleeper for you if you're in a deep league, 14-team plus, to put in your starting lineup this week. Wide receiver. This is a guy I really like because he hasn't been utilized this year quite enough, and that's Curtis Samuel. I think he'll get some carries this week. I think he'll also get a lot of passes because they're going to focus in on trying to stop Robbie Anderson over the top. They're going to focus in on DJ Moore because he's still the number one, which leaves Curtis Samuel against a secondary that legit gave me a call early today to see if I could come play. Tight end, Cameron Brate. So O.J. Howard goes down with an Achilles. Gronk is still not Gronk yet. Cameron Brate's a better football player than Gronk right now. Not period, just right now. So in a game where I think they're going to try to take care of Mike Evans, there's no Chris Godwin again, I believe. Cameron Brate could be a guy to get you something. And on the defensive side, I talked about a sneaky play. The Tennessee Titans. Wanted to mention it earlier. They have the Josh Allen annoyance, which is putting Jadeveon Clowney everywhere on that defensive line and having him run for no reason as fast as he can into people. Josh Allen, for some reason, will be like, you know what, this is a challenge. And that's not going to get it done. So I think Tennessee could be a great play this week against the Buffalo Bills.
I'm looking forward to that matchup, man, with Josh Allen and Jadeveon Clowney. That's two crash test guys that really love crashing into people. So they're going to meet a couple times this week on the football field. So, Chris, tell people what you got going on this upcoming week, football-wise, where they can follow you on social media. I know we said it all throughout the show, but I've kind of lost myself in transition. So why don't you tell people where they can follow you on social media?
No problem. We'll remind them again. It's at CJ Florida 9. The whole state of Florida is spelled out. The number 9 is singular by itself, not spelled out. So it's at CJ Florida 9. What I'm just going to be watching is I'm going to dive further into the NFL. College, I am easing my way into that because I have a specific opinion on whether or not they should even be playing. So
I feel you on that one. I definitely understand that point of view that you're talking about. We talked a lot about it off air. So we're not going to privy you guys, the fans, to that conversation because we both want to keep our well-paying jobs. So what we will say is thank you for watching Football Game Plan's Fantasy Starting Lineup. I'm Emory Hunt, the Art of Playbook. That's Chris James. Subscribe on YouTube, on iTunes. Tune in next week, and thank you guys for watching.